Hare Krishna, Krishna Kshetra Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. Thank you very much.
Please accept my humble obeisances, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu.
Thank you, Maharaj,
Nice
for
to be.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Nice to be back with you.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you very much for being here. It's been, it's really one of the first times when I'm doing a monks podcast on a similar subject, on a theme going on multiple sessions, and it creates some amount of sort of eagerness among the readers and also stimulates thought in the direction which I'm also finding it absorbing. So
yes,
thank you for that.
And it's also giving me also something to focus some meditation on, especially now in this Kartik month. Dashavatara is a nice meditation.
Yes, Maharaj, definitely. So today I think we are to discuss Varahadev? No, Vamanadev.
No, Varahadev.
Varahadev, sorry, yeah, Varahadev. I just got the words wrong. So Varahadev. So I in the Srimad Bhagavatam classes here in Govardhan Eco Village, they are doing a study of the all that Srimad Bhagavatam. So they're having like covering 4 chapters or 3 chapters per day in 1.5 hours. So during this COVID time, they thought of having a different kind of Bhagavatam class where.
So it's high speed turbo Bhagavatam.
Turbo Bhagavatam, yeah. So, but still they're having good attendance for the Bhagavatam classes, and right now the 7th canto is going on. So they had asked me to speak maybe a month or two ago on the 3rd canto on the section on this Varahadev pastime. So I had studied it at that time. And do you have some framework you would like to take, or should I suggest something? How we take the discussion?
Well, the frame, if we're talking about frames, I think the frame story of the cursing of Jai and Vijay is one principle. Another theme, I think, is the saving of the earth, which is relevant nowadays with climate change and eco disaster and so on.
Yes, Maharaj. I think both are. There's a lot to discuss on both themes. Because there's something like predestination, and so maybe you could take both one by one, if that's okay with you.
One by one, yes.
Yes, Maharaj. So I'll start with a question that comes to my mind. Currently, I'm writing a book on the Ramayana, where I'm analyzing something like analyzing human nature based on the Ramayana. So so I just wrote an article for Back to Godhead on, like, are some people incorrigible? So was Ravana, for example, was he incorrigible? There are so many efforts given to efforts made to make him see sense, but he didn't. Even Duryodhana, same thing with Duryodhana. So now at one level, we understand that everybody has free will, and if they can misuse their free will. But so if somebody is cursed to be demoniac, then is cursed to be a demon, then does that mean that their sense of agency is taken away because of that? Or does it mean that they just have a sense of, they have that kind of inclination? And that means that they will be pushed to act in that way, but they can counter push if they want. So a curse from a previous life, how much does it control? Does it control a person's situations? Does it control a person's disposition? Does it control other person's decisions also? So, I mean, it raises some philosophical questions broadly.
Yes. Well, we could also bring this question, so to say, from the other side. We see a person behaving in some nasty way. And we wonder, what is the cause? And the modern way to look at cause, of course, begins with this life. And then it's always a question of how much is nature and how much is nurture, right?
Yes. And it seems the modern leftist thought goes more and more toward nurture itself. So it seems like social
Yeah.
engineering is said to be the, what is the, I read a very succinct statement about the difference between, say, the left and the right, or capitalism and communism. It says that the idea within communism is that people are born good, society makes them bad. Whereas, in capitalism, the idea is people are born different, and society sometimes accentuates their differences. So, yeah, I think nature nurture is a fundamental issue. Yes, Maharaj.
Yes. So you can say the one of the common answers to this question in our literature, especially in the Puranas, is the cause can be traced to a previous life. And in this case, the question of the curse, the idea of the curse is interesting. For one thing, it's interesting, the whole notion of cursing is interesting because it suggests the power of speech, what they call speech act.
Yeah.
A speech act is when if someone says something, it actually makes that statement creates a reality. And the example is given of the judge on the bench giving a sentence to someone on trial. So the making of that statement determines that person's life, life imprisonment. Woo! Okay, that's it. And that comes just from a speech. You can say that's a kind of speech act. Or on the positive side, the priest tells the couple, I pronounce, at least in the West, I pronounce you man and wife. So now, boom, they're married just by that pronunciation. So a curse is something like that. I pronounce you condemned to take birth in the material world, etc.
Okay.
And so it points to the power of language. And of course, it points to the power of another agent to affect our lives. For someone, and of course, cursing is one side, the other side is blessing. I bless you that you X, Y, or Z.
Yes.
So in the case of Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, who are Jai and Vijay, in their previous life, they are cursed by the four Kumaras to take birth as demons. And Lord Vishnu comes and Lord Narayan and says, oh, thank you. Actually, this is my desire. And why is it the Lord's desire? Because he always has multiple purposes. One of them is to have some good wrestling, some good fights. And that's what's going to be described in some detail in this Varaha Lila. But to your question, I mean, that's always, that's the ongoing question, which nobody seems to have a completely comprehensive answer to. It's sort of, it's a species of the question of destiny versus free will, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. So I was just making some notes when you're speaking. So I was just thinking that, as I mentioned, there are three things: the situations, like if we look at our lives, there are some situations we face, there are some dispositions we have, and there are some decisions we make. So in the both examples that you gave of speech acts, I had also heard the word performative utterance for that, an utterance which leads to performance. They both, in one sense, create situations. Say
Yes.
you are sentenced to prison for life or whatever.
Mm.
So they now, at least in the first example of judge, it's primarily the situation that is controlled. Now we could say in that situation the prisoner, the convict might associate with other prisoners. That might also affect the disposition, but that act itself is only considering the situation. Now if we consider the with respect to marriage, it is a situation. It is more in terms of legally and socially a particular situation is created, and depending on how seriously the couple takes their marriage vows, a certain disposition may also be created at that time. Mhm. So now it seems that disposition depends not so much on the utterance of those words, but it depends on, we could say, prior disposition of the couple itself. So whether how seriously, how sacred or how serious they consider the marriage vows to be, then that, to that extent the ceremony of marriage will be the wedding ceremony will be taken that much seriously by them.
Mm.
But it doesn't seem to directly affect the disposition. and
Right.
and we could say the decisions, well, the situations do affect our decisions, but it's more like we could say they affect the range of the decisions. They're not the specific decision itself. So
Okay.
in the sense that
Yes.
if somebody's in the jail, they can't go out of the jail, but what do they do in the jail? They quarrel with others, or they learn something, they do some constructive courses and they come out. So that kind of decisions are up to them. So
Actually,
yeah, please.
no, you finish, and then I have an interesting example for prison that
Okay.
I just heard. Go
Okay.
ahead.
So I was thinking about when people are cursed. So there is definitely a dramatic change at the physical level. So now we could place the physical also in situation. Situation can be the circumstance. Situation can also be the body the soul is in. So with the body, it seems a certain kind of disposition comes with it. So now here there's the case of Rutrasur, who seems to behave just like a demon up to a particular point, and then suddenly his devotional tendency awakens. So that is, as far as I have read, I haven't seen any distinctive explanation for how the devotional tendency suddenly awakens. Maybe it is just he's confronting death, and then that time it happens. So it does seem that the disposition also is affected to some extent, because here changing the situation is not the situation alone, it's also the body. So that also raises some other questions, but I would like to hear what you what you want to say about the prison, then we can move forward.
Just a few days ago, discussing with His Holiness Chandramauli Swami, you may know he has been doing a lot of preaching in prisons over the years.
Oh yes, I have seen some of his books, The Holy Jail, and quite
He's
inspiring.
published a couple, yes, he's
Yes.
published, I think, 2 books on the subject. So he told a story of one convict who was sentenced to capital punishment, to death, for, some terrible crime. I don't know, murdering someone, whatever. And this person encountered Srila Prabhupada's books and devotees, and they had some meetings, and he got into Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And the time came for him to, he was on death row. There was no going back. So it was his day to go to whatever it is, the electric chair. And the guards reported that they'd never experienced anything like this. He went cheerfully.
Oh, amazing.
He went completely ready to go. It was like, yes, this is what I I deserve, and this is going to purify me, and the next life can only be better. That was his mood. So that's an interesting, profound transformation, you can say.
These are going to purify me. That's a remarkable thought to have. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
So as for Ravana, yeah, as I remember, in some version, it's said that he had 10 heads, and 9 of them were trying to advise him to give up this idea of taking Sita, but he wouldn't listen. So even with all the good advice, so that's a strong case for disposition being unchangeable. But then there's his brother, Vibhishana. And as we know, Vibhishana surrenders to Lord Ram. He gives up Ravana. He sees that Ravana is a hopeless case, and he then goes over and surrenders to Rama. So it seems like from that perspective, the Ramayana is saying there's both possibilities.
Of course, Vibhishan, he didn't have any curse on his head, which pushed him to behave in a particular way. So although he did have a demoniac birth, that means there is birth in a demoniac species, and so it seems that doesn't necessarily by itself create a demoniac disposition completely.
Right, because Prahlad is the example of he's the counterexample to disposition being completely determined for the demonic, so-called demonic species.
Oh yes, he's a sterling example. I think Krishna also in the Gita says that Prahladam asmi daityanam, that among the daityas I am Prahlad. He is one of the opulences. But again, the 16th chapter, when Krishna talks about the divine and the demoniac natures, he uses after listing the qualities, he says Abhijato si Bharata or Abhijato si Pandava. That the divine and the godly and the ungodly people are born with these particular natures. So these are the qualities they are born with. So now if we talk about qualities, then they are associated with disposition. So again, we could say probably disposition also is a complex thing, and there could be some inclination in that direction, but it might not be that forceful an inclination. It could be, but it seems Vibhishan, he didn't have any demoniac inclination at all. Prahlad also, it is, if there was any tension in their lives, it was not the inner tension between their dark side and their virtues and their vice. The tension was there whether they could go against the demoniac situation they were in, the demoniac relations that they had. So they were almost like complete exceptions, we could say. So in almost a society where everybody is dark and they were white. So
yeah. Now I'm just thinking about Hiranyaksha, to bring it back to our avatar of the day. Hiranyaksha, I was just reading, before he meets Varaha, he sort of bursts out after being born, and he's already in this fighting mood, looking for trouble. But it mentions in one verse that he wanted to fight to please his brother. He wanted to please Hiranyakashipu, and therefore he was fighting. And I was thinking, this Hiranyaksha, how how evil or non-evil is he? He's, he's a troublemaker. He doesn't care about anyone. So in certain ways, but is he really evil? I wonder. he doesn't seem to be. He seems to be very straightforward, for one thing.
Straightforward in the sense, I think when he goes to Varuna also, he says that, I want somebody to fight with me. I want to show my prowess.
Yeah.
So
yes, I want to fight somebody. You're a good person to fight. Let's fight.
so this is a interesting point. Maybe about 10 or 12 years ago, in one of temples, we had got some. It was a part of the fundraising initiative. So they had got some professional team of drama doers, and they had done a fundraising. They had done the drama of Krishna Lila, Krishna birth. For the first time, they had done that, and so there they had depicted Kamsa as performing lots of atrocities on the common citizens. So maybe stealing away the land from people, capturing women and abusing them and doing all kinds of things. Now, I had not read that in the Bhagavatam, or for that matter, in the Acharya's commentaries also. So in general, the characters we see, the evil characters in our scriptures, are they evil because they're particularly against the godly and God, or are they evil because they are doing terrible things in society? Now, some of them are definitely doing disruptive things. Say Ravana abducted many women. He destroyed kingdoms, and he killed and ate sages, and his associates were doing that. So with Ravana that is true, but with, say, Duryodhan, there is not much description that Duryodhan was actually exploitative of the citizens. There are some scholars.
It's more the opposite. It's more the opposite. It's said that Duryodhan was a very good leader, isn't it?
Well, he definitely had some amount of leadership skills. In fact, I saw one book which the whole book was about the leadership qualities of Duryodhan. It was a little counterintuitive, but he was able to keep his 99 brothers with him. He was able to form a big alliance with many kings. That's how he got such a big army. But then you could also make the point that maybe he still wanted to, because the Pandavas were still alive, so he didn't manifest his demoniac nature because he wanted the citizens to be with him. And when there will be no challenge to his power, then his evil nature might have come out more. But that's hypothetical. So
I was just going to say, that's very hypothetical.
yeah. So some characters we do know they are evil, but Hiranyaksha, so in that sense, the 7th canto, if you see Hiranyakashipu, he actually makes a plan to destroy the fire sacrifices and to disrupt society in general, which would cause the devatas to also get disturbed. So he seems to be much more of a social disruptor than Hiranyaksha.
Although it is mentioned that Hiranyaksha says at one point, we will kill Vishnu, and by killing Vishnu, all of the Brahminical, all the devas, all the Brahmins, all whatever they do will be finished. So he does seem to have a similar plan as Hiranyakashipu. That's true. One doesn't really get a sense of why. The only thing I saw with Hiranyaksha, his only motivation seems to be to please his brother. Which
That's
is
interesting.
okay.
It's also,
but why does he so much want to please his brother? We don't get any background to that.
And there is also, just to go back a little bit, there is the curse which was there, and also because of which they were born. And it's also said that Diti and Kashyap Muni united at a wrong time. That also affected their disposition. So
Yes.
multiple factors do affect it. So we don't know
Yeah.
what all would affect where.
There's a sense of convergence of influences, isn't there? Different things come together. There's
Okay, convergence. That's a good word.
it starts with the four Kumaras wanting to come to Vaikuntha, the obstruction, the curse, then there's Diti, and so these things kind of converge to make this event. And that leads into another consideration of this story that eventually comes to the appearance of Varaha, and that is Swayambhuva Manu. I would say Swayambhuva and his wife, what is her name? Atri? No, that's Prithu's wife.
Shatarupa.
Yeah, Shatarupa. So I was thinking, in a sense, Swayambhuva and Shatarupa are sort of opposites of Diti and Kashyapa. They are, well, Swayambhuva is also opposite of the four Kumaras, and Prabhupada mentions that in a purport. He mentions how the four Kumaras were disobedient to Lord Brahma. For good reason, but they were disobedient. And Swayambhuva is obedient. Brahma wants him to procreate, and he's very submissive to that will of Brahma. And he just has this one doubt. He expresses in a very humble way, where should I propagate the species? The earth is, there's no earth. Where am I supposed to go?
Oh, that's true.
So anyway, the point was that Diti, in her passion, insists that let us unite now, because now is my desire. And Swayambhuva Manu is, in a sense, the opposite of that. He is self-restrained, and he wants to first have the right situation for the propagation. So this then leads to the appearance of Varaha.
That's interesting. And Swayambhuva Manu, if we consider, from him there's Devahuti and Kardam also perform austerities. And then there is the appearance of Kapila over there.
Yeah.
So it's almost opposite trajectories.
Yes.
Yeah. So, when you mentioned the point of convergence, so I think that's the level of understanding we can get, specifically which factors cause how much. I don't think we could ever put a percentage on or a figure on that.
Calculations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was asked one question. Apparently, there's some book on karma and destiny which is quite popular in India, which says that something like they put a mathematical figure: 25% of who you are is determined by your past lives, 25% is determined by your upbringing, 25% is your association, and 25% is your free will. So it seems very convenient, but I don't think things are that simple. So Krishna says Gahana Karmano Gati. So, but we could say all those are factors. So Hiranyaksha, now when he wants to please his brother also, that itself is indicative that whom we want to please also indicates, not only it influences, but also indicates our disposition. Does he want to please him simply because he's his brother? Or does he want to please him because they both share the similar values? And currently he happens to be in that position of authority where, as a younger brother, he offers him some deference and some respect. So that,
But you can also say, putting aside question of disposition and so on, that this suggests that there is at least a grain of virtue. To desire to please anyone, in a general sense, is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's a very human, we may say, thing or desire to please another. And we can also look at it in terms of filial piety, if you like. I forget now which one is the older and which is the younger. I think Hiranyaksha is born second or first.
yeah, it's that they were
very
conceived first, but he was born second. So Hiranyakashipu is
right.
considered the older brother.
Okay. So from that perspective, Hiranyaksha is being a pious younger son, a younger brother.
Yes.
And that's the idea of filial piety is, of course, they're very strongly in Asian traditions generally, including China, especially China. There's 5 different relationships in classical Chinese and they're all hierarchical. So one of them is, I think, older brother, younger brother. And the younger brother's position is always to satisfy the older brother, or at least to respect. So from that perspective, you can say, Hiranyaksha is not a bad guy.
Oh, okay. So it's filial piety. It's 2 words or it's 1 word, filial piety, or both are there?
Filial, 1 word, Filial, filial.
Yeah, filial piety. Okay. I had not heard of that word. I thought it's filial piety, something like
No.
okay, filial piety makes sense. So in one sense, the example, on the positive side of this is say Lakshman and Ram or Bharat and Ram, of devotion to virtue leading to like manifestation of virtue among the younger brothers also. So on the other hand, from that perspective, you can also understand for Vibhishan to go against Ravan was quite a demanding, quite a bold and difficult thing to do.
Indeed.
Yeah. So you're saying in Chinese culture also, as in Indian culture, this filial piety is important. I hadn't heard the term, but that concept is very much there.
Yeah, in Confucian tradition especially, it's considered foundational. Society is founded upon this principle of, I forget the Chinese term for it, but it's this hierarchical recognition. The king and the servant, it's very patriarchal also. The husband and the wife, the father and the son. I think the father-son relationship is considered to be the core, and then from that come the other hierarchical relations.
Oh, okay.
But it's not. There's some subtleties to the Chinese tradition. So, for example, the son is allowed to, in fact, expected to give good advice to the parents if he or she feels that the parents are doing something which is not good, which is not for their benefit, whatever, then he should advise them. But he can never go against ultimately whatever the parents decide. So it's a very strong idea in that tradition.
Oh, okay. So in one sense, the Bhagavatam is a bit subversive, where it goes against all conventional hierarchies, where Prahlad gives advice, and not just only advice, but also goes against Hiranyakashipu.
Indeed. But of course, the way Prahlad does it is he never overtly defies his father, does he? When his father asks him questions, he just answers honestly.
Yeah, that's true. He is, in a sense, Prahlad's example is a good example of how to differ without being disrespectful.
Yeah.
He Asurvarya Dehi now, best of king, best of demons.
Yes.
That's not an
You're
insult.
the best.
That's
Oh, best of the demons.
yeah. Okay. So filial broadly refers to broadly family and one's clan, isn't it? So maybe something parallel to it could be what the Bhagavad Gita calls about as Kula Dharma. Hmm? And Arjuna is concerned, how can I, if I kill my elders, if I kill my relatives, the Kula Dharma will be destroyed. So
Right.
I don't know. At least in the Hindu context, I have not seen the word filial piety used, but Kula Dharma is quite a prominent consideration in the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yes, Maharaj. So, so the point you are making is we can see virtue even in somebody who is considered to be demoniac. So Hiranyaksha had the virtue of being of some amount of filial piety.
Yes. Well, we had last, I guess it's a year and a half ago now, we had Nrsimha Chaturdasi festival in Germany. And we had, there were several of us giving the morning lecture one after another, including myself and also His Holiness Kadamba Swami. And we got into this sort of spontaneous debate, which became quite entertaining and humorous. But I was trying to defend Hiranyakashipu and say, we have to look at his background, we have to consider, and so on. And he also had, emotions, feelings. I was making some arguments like that. And then Kadamba Swami said, no, I don't buy it. He said, he was completely demoniac and therefore he had to be killed. There was nothing nice about him. So it became like a courtroom sort of, we started having like a debate. And from that, I got the idea, which I have yet to pursue. I started to make some notes, but I would like to write a drama. And the drama would be focused on Hiranyakashipu and maybe also Hiranyaksha. After both of them have been killed and before they take birth again as Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and they're in the court of Yamaraj. And the discussion is, where should they go, or what happened and where should they go, and what is the just punishment for them, and so on. And there could be lawyers and some arguing. There can be the priest of the demigods, Brihaspati, and like that.
Amazing.
So a lot of what we read, in one sense, in the Puranas and the epics, Mahabharata, Ramayana, one could say that these are, despite their details, they're still leaving gaps. There's still something not described, something not given full attention.
Yes, I think that's very much there, and that's why there is a later.
And that
Yeah, sorry.
that what's left out seems to me, it seems to me what's left out is left for us to reflect on.
Yes, Maharaj. First of all, this is a beautiful idea to use. We had discussed earlier podcast about using our imagination in Krishna's service. So
Yeah.
that's a brilliant idea. And there are many narratives of the Ramayana as well as and especially of the Mahabharata, which are from the
Many.
from the perspective of the characters on the dark side. So one of the most popular and influential renditions of the Ramayana of the Mahabharata, in at least in Maharashtra and elsewhere, is Mrityunjay, which tells everything from Karna's perspective and how life was always unfair to him, and it creates a lot of empathy for those characters. So I haven't seen till now, say, like a somebody who is faithful to a tradition, a devotee or an exponent of dharma writing on these. Then we could concede good where there is good, but at the same time point out where there is bad. There is one tendency would be to paint these characters entirely black, and the other tendency would be to exempt them from all wrong. I'd say, it is so many things unfair happened to them, that's why they did this.
Yeah. Prahlad doesn't seem to do either. He seems to withhold all judgment on his father, isn't it? He just wants the best for him. And so he requests Nrsingadev afterward. Of course, now we're getting into the next avatar.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to, if we continue this thread of discussion, there's a lot to discuss at that time also. And maybe we could look at specific verses and discuss at that time.
Yeah.
So if we consider the convergence explanation, so we could say there are two negative influences for his demoniac nature. One is the curse from the Kumaras, and second is his birth at the inauspicious time. And there is, we could say, I don't know if you want to use
his conception.
Yes, conception.
Their conception at an inauspicious time.
Yeah, not birth, conception, right? And then there is, we could say, a positive factor which leads to his negative behavior. That is filial piety. So sometimes loyalty can be misdirected, and so we appreciate the loyalty, but at the same time we recognize that the effect of that loyalty is not necessarily healthy. So
yes.
So it's interesting when I read that pastime that he challenges Varuna, and after he challenges Varuna, says, "Oh, I'm not fit for fighting with you, but you will soon find someone who will destroy your pride." And so Varuna is the lord of the gods. Sorry, he's the lord of the waters. And it's interesting, the avatar who manifests over there manifests in water.
Yes.
So it does seem that the very area where he's claiming this is my turf, or he's trying to dominate the overlord of that particular area, the Supreme Lord appears over there.
He says, okay, you like this water business, so I will appear this way. Why not?
Yeah, that's true. Beautiful. And then I think he uses the word, an amphibious beast. That's one of the
I was
words.
just going to say,
yeah, please.
But the word that is translated as amphibious beast, which comes again a few verses later, is vanagochara.
Oh, okay. Vanagochara.
Which of course means one who goes in the forest, or one whose terrain, one whose place is the forest. It comes again, I noted it here somewhere, but he's, it's just interesting that he's referred to that Prabhupada. I don't know if it was Prabhupada or if it was Pradyumna Prabhu in the word for word in translation. That's one of those things. But it kind of fits because he's in and out of the water, so to say.
Yeah. So it seems as boars, they don't constantly live in the water. So
no.
The most of the
We
time.
have boars, right? I'm living right now in a place which is directly adjacent to a fairly large forest, and we see boar tracks all the time in the forest. There are boars here.
Oh, okay. So I just found that verse. Yes, it's Jahasa Chaho Vana Charo Mrugaha. So yes, Vana Gocharo. Uh, so when they encounter each other in water, and most of the fight seems to happen in the water, or at least by the water.
It's not exactly clear, I think.
Yeah, there's not much description of, say, water splashing and everything. They meet in the water, maybe they
No.
come out, because
Yeah.
it's more a description of they dodging the blows, and like that, the weapons being hurled and weapons being caught. There's no description of the water getting
And
disrupted. So
weapons
probably,
being lost.
yeah,
Yes.
weapons. That's true. So probably they came out of the water. They met each other in the water. So here we had discussed a theme. If I can go to the next theme, or you want to add something on this
Yes. No.
about the
Let's
earth?
go ahead.
Yeah, about the earth and protecting the earth. So here there is this whole idea of the literal and the metaphorical, and somewhere in between the reality. So
Yes. One of your favorite topics.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but I think for a rational, if you have to observe the Leela from a rational perspective, that does come up. So
Yes.
I was currently studying the fifth canto cosmology, and the Bhagavatam doesn't say that. At least it doesn't use the literal words that Rahu and Ketu, for example, they devour or they eat sun and moon at the time of eclipse. It just says that they obscure it or cover the influence, depending on how the Sanskrit is translated. So in this case, the earth, there's a very literal or physical description that the earth had fallen down into the ocean, and the earth was lifted up, and he was balancing him with his snout. So, and there's also some sort of description that apparently Hiranyaksh had disrupted the balance of the earth by taking a lot of gold from it. He had Hiranyaksha. He had an eye for gold. That's one reading I had, that he was very greedy for gold. And
that's nice. Eye for gold. Okay. Yes.
yeah. So because of that, the earth's balance had got disrupted, and the earth had fallen down into the ocean. So to what extent is this to be taken literally? Because if the earth had fallen, then had everybody on the earth been killed at that time, if they had gone under the ocean, or it was just for a few moments?
Yes, I mean to say, how literal. I don't feel like it's necessary to think in too literal terms here, because it is hard to imagine what is that, what would that mean. But at the same time, from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, we get the sense with Krishna's pastimes of killing the demons that they are allegorical, and at the same time, they're no less actual. We don't have to have one or the other. There can be both.
Yes. So
in any case, it's also interesting that Hiranyaksha at one point says there's a lot of verbal exchange. There's a lot of insulting that goes on between Hiranyaksha and Varaha as a sort of, I think, somewhat formulaic, what's the word I want? It's kind of a ritual. Before you have a fight, first you insult each other.
Yeah.
And by insulting, you get the other person angry, and the other person gets you angry, and then you can really have a good fight. So one of his insults is, one of Hiranyaksha's insults, as I remember, is, this is our territory. The earth belongs to us meaning the demons.
Yes.
We are in charge of the lower area, the lower spheres, realm. And so,
I just shared the screen in case you want. Yeah.
oh yeah, okay.
This earth is entrusted to us, the inhabitants of the lower regions. And you cannot take it from my presence and not be heard by me.
Yes.
That's very interesting. Yes, Maharaj.
And on the side of insults, saying, oh, an amphibious beast.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting.
That's a kind of
it's
an insult.
Now Prabhupada also used the word rascal. Is there a word for rascal?
Oh, I don't know. You mean, is he translating some Sanskrit word? I don't know.
You rascal, you have been nourished by our enemies to kill us. So, Paroksha Jita Yoga Maya Balam. I don't think there's a... Okay, Mudha it is there. So there's full
Mudha, yes.
Prabhupada translate that
and
as...
what I know very well, one time, you know how many times Prabhupada would say fools and rascals?
Yes.
And one time he said something about fools and rascals, and then he paused and he said, fool means rascal.
Okay. That's true. Fool means rascal. Okay. So in a sense, at least the way the word...
So there's no excuse, you know, you may say, oh, I'm just foolish. No, you're a rascal.
Yeah. So if you do consider, at least in today's usage, the word fool seems to be a little not as strong as rascal, unless of course rascal is used in a more of a mischievous sense. Oh, you are such a rascal, he's such a rascal. But so I heard that in Prabhupada's times, when Prabhupada learned his English in Scottish Church College in 1920s, rascal at that time was not that strong a term. It was more like an affectionate form of reproach.
Well, I think it is today as well.
Oh, it's today?
I think it is. Yeah. I don't know. You don't hear the word rascal in public discourse.
Yeah, that is true.
You don't hear the word rascal. So it's a little bit quaint.
Quaint. Okay. Yeah.
There was a comedy series on television when I was a kid. I think it was from before I was a kid, called something The Little Rascals. And it was about three boys who would always get into trouble, you know, and some humorous thing was happening.
Oh, okay. So I just looked at this. It says rascals are mischievous, but their intentions are to have fun rather than to be cruel. So a clown is a rascal, but a robber is not a rascal. A robber is a criminal. Okay. So it seems even now that the same thing is true. Yeah.
So there is this problem for Swayambhuva Manu, that there's no place. And one very broad thing we may want to think about with the Bhagavatam is the problem of creation. Lord Brahma has a lot of trouble doing his job, which is creating the world, creating the universe. And there are always these reversals. And one of the reversals is this. And of course, that's the function of one of the functions of the avatars in general, is to solve such problems.
Okay.
to fix things so that the creation and its purpose can go on in its proper way, so dharma can be practiced. So there's no question of practicing dharma because there's no place to do it. And Swayambhuva Manu is very polite in his presenting this problem to Lord Brahma. And then Lord Brahma, what does Lord Brahma do? He thinks about it. What to do? And there's no sense given that Lord Brahma, because his body is constituted of buddhi, isn't it? He is the embodiment of intelligence, so he can think of something to do, but he doesn't seem to exactly think of what to do. Rather, the Lord just appears. But where does he appear? He appears in a very strange place. He appears through the nostril of Lord Brahma. Now, here I have to confess, I thought of an interesting connection to the four Kumaras as they're attempting to enter Vaikuntha. As we know, there's a famous verse, when Lord Narayan comes, as soon as the four Kumaras see Lord Narayan, what happens? Tasyara vinda nayanasya padara vinda kinjalka mishra tulasi makaranda vayu. Antargata svavivarena chakarate sham sankshobam aksharajusham api chittatanvo. So antargata svavivarena, entering into their nostrils, through their own nostrils, is the aroma of the tulsi mixed with sandal at the lotus feet of the Lord. That entry into their nostrils is their experience. That's their first powerful experience of the Lord, which has the result of sankshobam. It's transformative. It agitates for change. Sankshobam aksharajusham api, although attached to impersonal Brahman. So this was their conversion story.
Beautiful.
And it all happens because of their nostrils.
Oh, okay.
And of course,
okay.
Of course, they were attempting to enter Vaikuntha and they were obstructed, so they could not enter, but the Lord entered them. And now we have Lord Brahma thinking what to do. And what happens? The Lord emerges from his nostril.
Oh, that's a striking correlation. Okay.
And I think it's another example of divine humor also. Like, who would have thought to appear in that way? Only the Lord would think to appear out of the nostrils of Lord Brahma. And, he's having some fun.
That's amazing. So, this aspect of the Lord appearing through the nostrils, it's not exactly described in this section, isn't it? In this section, it is just Varahadev is already there.
No, the description of his appearance goes back to...
I think around 9th or 10th chapters, I think.
Chapter 13.
Oh, before the chapter about the Kumaras going up. Okay. It's a nested story.
It's
Appearance of
it's
Varaha. Okay. Yeah, right.
yeah,
Chapter 13 is that's the name of that chapter itself. Okay.
yeah.
So I was wondering whether there are any living beings that reproduce through the nose. I don't think there's anything like that. Or
No, I don't think so. And to me, the point is that whereas the only thing that comes out of our nose is something not very nice, we blow our nose and get rid of it. But when it comes to Lord Brahma and the Lord, then it's a different story.
yeah.
The Lord himself comes, but he's coming in this very strange form of a wild pig. And I like to sort of joke with devotees that if we are presenting ourselves to people who are not familiar with our tradition, it might be difficult for them to appreciate that you start out by saying, yes, we worship God as a wild pig.
Oh God. Yeah, this is even more wild. People talk about what is the word for zoomorphism or animal
Yeah,
worship. Yeah.
zoomorphism.
But they talk about a monkey god, Hanuman,
Yeah,
but a boar god would be a little too stretching things a bit too much.
that's a bit too much. Yeah. Tortoise god, boar god, fish god.
But in cultural conceptions, is a boar considered positive in any culture? Like uh, pigs are considered a little bit unclean, and at least in the Vedic culture. I don't know how it is in other cultures.
Actually, pigs can be very clean, but they wallow in the mud because it keeps them cool.
Oh,
And
okay.
of course, because they will eat practically anything, therefore they're generally considered unclean. But from one source I read, the boar, I think this is in India, is given credit for showing humanity how to plow. Because one thing that boars do is they dig up because they eat roots. In
Oh,
fact,
okay.
we experienced that right here where I'm staying. One night they came and they dug up one small area just outside our main courtyard, but in one night, the whole field of, I don't know, say 200 square meters, maybe more, was completely dug up by the
200
boars.
square meter. Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then that also we could say correlates with Varahadeva's attraction for the earth. Varaha is often
Yes.
considered to be the consort of the earth, or earth is considered to be his consort either way.
Consort. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And of course,
there's a description
Varaha
of,
is
yeah.
the
There's also a description that he was sniffing the earth. So which is also related with that, burrowing the earth.
he was what?
Like he was
Nursing?
sniffing the earth.
Oh, sniffing. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, you were saying something, Maharaj?
Just that Varahadev there are Varaha temples in India and Varaha deities. And in Mathura, there are two Varaha deities. I've always wanted to go and see them, but I never managed. But these are said to be, at least one of them, established by Shatrughna, the brother of Rama.
Oh, okay. I had no idea about this. This is in Mathura, the temple? Oh,
There's, I think, two temples. And years ago, one devotee who had done a bit of research said that there's a very ancient community of Brahmins in Mathura, and their Ishta Devata is Varahadev.
Oh, okay.
And this got me wondering. Now comes, I have to always do some speculating. So here's my speculation about our Gaudiya Vaishnava book of ritual is the Hari Bhakti Vilasa. And there are a lot of mysteries about this book. I spent some time studying it, and there are some fairly strange things about it. But one thing I came to suspect is that Gopal Bhatta Goswami and Sanatana Goswami compiled this book for one purpose, was to show the local Brahmins, these Mathura Brahmins, that we can be just as involved in ritual as you are. We can do as much ritual, if not more, than you do.
Oh, okay.
Because they could very well have been considered by the local Brahmins. Oh, who are these upstarts coming from coming from where? Coming from Bengal. Oh, come on. There's no Brahminical culture in Bengal. Of course, Gopal Bhatta came from South India. Anyway, that's my speculation. But about deities of Varaha, there's also Varaha Nrsimha at Singhachalam on the east coast, south of Puri. That deity is combined, Varaha and Nrsimha.
Yes. That's beautiful. So,
and that, a sort of explanation of that is, that's right on the coast. And this, as I remember the story they tell, I visited there decades ago. The story is that this is the place where the minions of Hiranyakashipu attempted to kill Prahlad by throwing him over the cliff into the sea. And he was saved, they say, by the Lord in this form, the combined form of Varaha and Nrsimha.
oh, okay. Yeah, I heard the stories of Varaha and Nrsimha. And again, now we could associate Varaha with some kind of water association, because when he was thrown into the water, he was saved over there. That's fascinating.
Also, I just came across this a few days ago because I wanted to be thinking about Varahadev. There's, maybe you can look this up on the internet. There's a very large stone Varaha Murti in a place called Eran. If you go to Wikipedia,
yes,
and search Eran, E-R-A-N. It's a town in central India. And if you scroll down, I think you'll see an image.
Yes, coming to that.
This very, very large image of Varaha.
Amazing. I think I shared it just now. Can you?
Yes.
Mandapa of the temple, Vishnu.
No, if you scroll further down.
You see the Varaha temple, okay. Oh.
Yes, there.
Colossal.
Eran, colossal boar statue.
How big is it?
Now, quite big. I don't know how big, but I think...
it's huge, yes.
Yeah. So there's some kind of tradition of worshiping Varahadev, which goes back to very ancient times. Now, notice also what looks like inscriptions on the side of the Murti. Well, one thing also, you can see Bhudevi is there in the form of a female figure,
Oh,
and
okay.
she's kind of holding on, it looks like, to his tusk or something.
Hmm.
And then there are, you can sort of see lines, parallel horizontal lines along the body. And I don't know if they're inscriptions or what, but the point is, if you remember, in the appearance of Varahadev in the Bhagavatam, he is worshipped by the sages and the demigods as being the personification of the yajna.
Hmm.
And it describes in the Bhagavatam, it identifies several features of Varahadev, of his physical form, as being different aspects, different items or elements of the sacrifice.
Oh, okay. I thought that
Uh,
is that a specific description for Varahadev, or is it a generic description for any manifestation of the divine?
no, it's Varahadev.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I can find now.
I can look for it. This is in the prayers Brahmaji is offering. Yeah, I found it.
It's in chapter
Yeah, I
13.
found it. I'm just sharing it, Maharaj.
Okay, Rishaya Uchu.
So it's 34th verse onwards. It's there on the shared screen also, in case you want to see there, Maharaj.
Yes. It's not just one verse, it goes on from there.
Yeah, it's 3, 4, 5 verses. Your semen is sacrifice called Soma Yagya. Oh,
Yeah, so it's all about sacrifice. So there's this association of Varaha with Vedic sacrifice.
that's interesting.
And it would be interesting to do more research to see what is that association. It's like he is a kind of Virat Rupa of the sacrifice.
Yeah.
But where is that all trailing back to? I don't know if that's something, could be something in the Brahmanas, the the Shatapata Brahmana or something.
Yes. When I had read this, I had thought of Virat Rupa, but I did not think of this idea that Virata Rupa of Yagya or something like that. That's very striking. Now, I once did a study of the various prayers or descriptions of the universal form in the Bhagavatam, a comparative study. But I didn't find anything about sacrifice to this extent, like going over several verses. There's a general description that he is the Yagya Bhok or Yagya Purush, like that. Generic descriptions are there, but this is very specific.
Yes.
Yes, Maharaj.
And there's another thing about Varahadev's appearance. He appears first from the nostril, and he's described as being the size of a thumb.
Oh, so that's similar to almost similar to Matsya. Where Matsya is very small and then he becomes large.
And then he expands.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have altogether 3 expanding avatars. There's Matsya, there's Varaha, and there's going to be also Vamana.
Vamana, yes. Now, I don't know, at least there are not many Matsya temples, isn't it? Varaha temples seem to be more than Matsya.
Yes.
Just look at one, there seems a Matsya Narayan temple in Chennai.
Acha.
There's not, but it seems to be a recent temple built by, at least like a recent temple. It doesn't seem to be a traditional temple. So if we consider
not so
the
popular.
Yeah. So if we consider the various avatars, which all are worshipped regularly, we don't even have a Matsya appearance day, isn't it? From what I know.
That's celebrated amongst the fish.
Among the fish. Okay, that's beautiful. That's true. So So
We have Varaha Mahadvadashi.
yeah, Varaha Mahadashi, we have that big festival. Uh, so Maharaj, just going back to your point of sacrifice, this also seems to be a part of the subversive thread that normally pigs or boars would be kept away from a sacrifice, that they would consider to be contaminating a sacrifice. But here, the Lord in the form of a pig or of a boar is considered to be the object of sacrifice, the personification of the object of sacrifice. So, which is remarkable.
It is. And if you think about object of sacrifice, that sounds like, okay, so boars would be animals that are victims of sacrifice. But as I understand,
Okay.
Vedic sacrifice, when they do sacrifice animal, it's always a domestic animal, not a wild animal.
Interesting. Yeah, it might be a horse. Okay.
Horse, cow, goat, and what else? There's 5. One is Purusha, human sacrifice. There's a big debate about that. Was that ever done, or it's just token mentioned?
There is no description of dogs being sacrificed also. Then all the domestic animals are there.
Dog sacrifice? I don't know. I never heard of that.
Yeah.
Dogs, as I understand in traditional Indian culture, they're liminal animals. They're not exactly domesticated, and they're not wild. They're kind of in between.
Oh, okay.
They live around humans, and of course they benefit from humans, but they're not exactly of course, now in modern, following the West, they've become domesticated, and we have people with dogs in their apartments and so on.
Yeah.
But the more traditional condition of dogs in India is what we see mainly in the villages, right? The dogs of the village. They're just...
That's true. And it's interesting, somebody was mentioning to me that there's not much mention of cats in the scriptures. Like cats and dogs are popular pets now. So dogs are lauded at least for their loyalty, although and obedience, but cats are not mentioned much that way. Isn't it?
No, I don't know about pet cats.
That's interesting.
Right.
Okay.
But I think he has a pet dog, no?
Yeah, I also remember reading about that in Gopal Champu. He does seem to have pet.
Yes.
That's interesting. Okay. So now going to talk about the boar. Would you like to talk about the theme of, say, saving the earth a little bit?
In relation to ecology, environmental concerns, I just think it's nice to reflect on how the Lord saves the earth, because we may feel a sense of helplessness with respect to, I feel a sense sometimes in my lower moments that what we're doing as a species to the Earth planet is so disastrous that there's only one way that this can be fixed, and that is if the Lord himself comes. And of course, we understand the Lord has come, and he has given the process for saving the earth, namely Sankirtana. And that is therefore what we do. And Lord Chaitanya is therefore who we worship first and foremost. But I just find it inspiring to also think of Varahadev as coming in this very special and surprising form. and expanding himself and then effortlessly lifting the earth from its condition of, we can say, degradation and danger.
That's beautiful. So we could focus on the broad principle rather than the specifics of the earth going into the water and being lifted up. So we could, the broad principle is that the earth is so dear to the Lord that he rescued it. And says the Lord can do the same thing again, which is so true.
Yes, and he's full of surprises. So we can hope for something wonderful to happen. And of course, he is saving the earth, who is Bhumi, who is also, if I'm not mistaken, the same as Varahi, or the consort of Varahadev. So he's very much interested to save, just as Ram saves Sita, so Varaha saves Bhumi. And that takes us back to the fight with Hiranyaksha, because that's mentioned in one verse explicitly, that the fight was as if they were fighting over, the princess. I forget how it's put. They're fighting over it's two men fighting over a woman, the sort of primordial reason that men fight is competition for a woman. And Hiranyaksha thinks he's somehow going to enjoy Bhumi.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I remember reading that also now. It's a very striking point, because if we put aside we could say the morphological forms, then there are even the characters, like even the demons seem to have a lot of human emotions. So whether it's the devatas or the asuras, they also face human challenges. Their forms might be different, they might have certain abilities which we humans don't have, but broadly speaking, it is one way we can relate with them is because many of the emotions that they have or the challenges they face, they are quite human challenges. I think you earlier also made that point about humanizing even the characters on the dark side to understand them better. Yeah. So
Yes.
so when the Lord fights here, it's so it's interesting. Bhumi here is not described as talking anything or expressing anything. It's Brahmaji
No,
who is, Brahmaji who is expressing. He's urging the Lord, appreciating the Lord, and urging him to please finish the demon, please. And then it seems that Varahadev casts an affection-filled glance at Brahma. So, so the Bhumi seems to be quite, in this case, we could say passive. And there is no description of the Bhumi being personified over here. Like say in the first canto, where she and Dharma, the bull and the cow come together. There is no description like that here. And and is there any explicit description about the Bhumi being a circle or being a sphere? Because
being a globe.
Globe, yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming that Bhumi is a globe, which kind of goes against the flat Earth people, but what to do?
Yeah, that's true. So
it's mentioned that Varaha goes down, he picks up the earth from the ocean, and he sets it, isn't it? He sets it to float on the Garbhodaka ocean, isn't it?
Yeah, it keeps it in such a way that it floats. Somehow it seems to infuse his potency or something in that, by which he floats.
Yes. Now, I suppose you could say, well, it could be a flat object, but I find that difficult to imagine. I think of it more as a globe.
That's true. That's true. So now, so when the Lord receives or rather rescues and protects the earth, and he fights the demon. So we could, in a general sense, say that this is like an inspiration for us to also, on behalf of the Lord, fight against the forces that are disrupting the earth or disturbing the earth's balance. So there is this verse in the Bhagavatam where it says that Swair Dorbhir Asyana Dharmam. At the force Krishna, he countered the forces of dharma sometimes by his own arms and sometimes by the arms of his devotees. So
Yes.
Swair Dorbhir. And I think, and Prabhupada also in one purport, he gives a very fascinating that explanation, that verse is there in the Gita, that everywhere are my hands and legs, everywhere are my eyes and ears and nose. So
Yes.
he says that actually one explanation is that it's a super soul. Another explanation is that there are countless devotees and representatives of the Lord, and through them the Lord is present everywhere. So, so in that sense, we could also act as representatives of the Lord to try to counter the disruptive influences.
And here is the challenge to do it in the right mood, to be in a spirit of Prahlad, who absolutely refused to get involved in political thinking of friends and enemies. I was meditating on this today because I come in this life from the US, from America, and they're having this this election, and it's a real sort of fingernail biting situation.
Yeah.
And everyone is very emotional about it. And I was just thinking this morning, on one side, I'm also feeling kind of emotional, but on the other, I'm feeling that after all, we're aspiring to be like Prahlad Maharaj, who refused. That was his a special quality, that he refused to be like his father, who was thinking only in terms of politics, of friends and enemies. Prahlad wouldn't have anything to do with it. No friends, no enemies. Completely neutral. So, saving the earth and being arms to save the earth as agents, as instruments of the Lord, is certainly a good thing. Now, how to do that without immediately getting tied up in some politics in which we see only friends and enemies.
That's one of the reasons, Prabhupada also said that I'll be the guru of the king. I won't be the king. Because to some extent, if you get enmeshed in politics, then avoiding that kind of vision would be very difficult. So,
yes.
Yeah, there's regarding maybe environment, it's a big subject, and I will just mention a couple of things. Somehow, this issue has become at one level, environmental consciousness is good. It's very good. It indicates, like earlier you said, a desire to take care of something beyond oneself, a desire to please or desire to take care. So that's the expansion of consciousness. But in some ways, it has become almost like another religion, where some people who are out to save the environment, they can also become a bit extremists in this is all we have to do, and anybody who is not concerned about the environment, it's almost like you are a condemned sinful person. How can you be so selfish, so unconcerned, whatever? So in a sense, like for some people, environmental consciousness may be the way to spiritual consciousness, because it is expanding the consciousness. But sometimes, and for some people, environmental consciousness may become like a substitute for spiritual.
Shrinking, yeah.
Oh yeah, shrinking, yeah. It may. So in a sense, if we focus on spiritualizing consciousness, then environmental awareness will come in a way that will be actually healthy. Otherwise, it can become a it can become another form of another ism, as Prabhupada says in the
Yeah.
Ishopanishad. Yeah.
And I think the essential principle to keep it spiritual is, again, what Prabhupada how many times would say, that Krishna is the proprietor of everything. Ishavasyamidam sarvam. So if we can help people to understand that point, there is a proprietor, and it's not us. Because the general, when the the eco saviors come, who are not Krishna conscious, their thinking it's mundane, because they're thinking we have to save the earth for us.
Yeah.
If we don't save it for us, then we are lost. But the Krishna conscious perspective is, it is Bhumi, and Bhumi is to be cared for as a mother, and just for Krishna we do, because she belongs to Krishna, and then Krishna will provide for us as a result.
True. And in this sense, if from that perspective, say that the Lord is reciprocating with Brahma, and quite often it is that the earth, when she is in trouble, she goes to Devatas and they all go to Brahma. So Brahmaji often seems to be the medium between, say, the rest of the universe and the Lord who is transcendental to the universe. So there are, if we consider Brahma to be broadly like a devotee, and in this pastime, the earth is playing more of a passive role. So it is the devotees, it is that as devotees we try to either take care of the earth or pray to the Lord on behalf of the earth, and then through that it is we also reciprocate with the Lord. So we are not just reciprocating with the environment, but we are also reciprocating with the Lord. So environmental consciousness actually becomes included within devotional reciprocations with the Lord.
Yeah. Yes, that's nice. And on the other side, this brings me to a verse that I found striking in Canto 3, Chapter 19, the killing of the demon Hiranyaksha, verse 24. Okay. There's a humor here also. Vinashtasu svamayasu bhuyas chavraja keshavam rusho pagu hamano amum dadrishe avastitam bahi. When the demon saw his magic forces dispelled, he once again came into the presence of the personality of Godhead Keshava, and, full of rage, tried to embrace him within his arms to crush him. But to his great amazement, he found the Lord standing outside the circle of his arms.
That's beautiful.
This comic situation, we can picture it, of this big demon. He wants to embrace the Lord to crush him, and where is he? Oh, he's over there.
Okay.
But also his wanting to praise him, his wanting to embrace him from the Bhagavat sort of absolute perspective, it means he's attracted to the Lord. He wants to serve the Lord. He wants to approach the Lord. He wants to embrace the Lord. Even he wants to, it's like Putana wants to poison the Lord, but she's giving something. So I was thinking of this in terms of what you were saying about the the environmentalists, let's say the fanatic who is not God conscious, but only thinking we humans are going to save the planet. In a sense, they're not far away from Hiranyaksha, who they will embrace the Lord to crush him, and in the process, they miss him altogether.
That's beautiful. They try to catch, but they don't catch him at all. And in one sense, it's like the idea that the Lord can, the Upanishad says that Manaso Jayam, that he cannot be reached by the mind. He's situated at one place, but he cannot be reached even by those who move at the speed of the mind. Even Munipungavanam, the Brahma Samhita also says that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there is also the story of Kala Yavan in the 10th canto, where Krishna is just walking casually, and he's chasing him, but he's not able to reach Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah. But it never struck me that he wanted to embrace so that he could crush, but he completely missed out. That's interesting. Quite extraordinary. I think the gopis also pray that, not the gopis, the Nagapatnis pray that, how is it that you get that this Kaliya has got the privilege of having your lotus feet on his head. So this is a privilege that hardly anyone gets. So he almost gets the privilege of embracing the Lord over here.
He tries, but he misses.
He misses, yeah. And with respect to this humor, what you said, there are so many places which I never thought of it from a humorous perspective. It is funny if you try to visualize it. So it's almost like the fight goes on for quite some time, and then when he has to end it, he ends it very casually. There are all these weapons being used here.
He just kind of he just slaps him on the chin or under the ear or something.
Yeah, under the ear someways.
And then he's finished.
So,
and for that matter, I would say that the whole, the way this fight is described, the general feel I get from it is it's a kind of ritual fight. You don't really get a sense of there's some really heavy thing going on here. I mean, it's a fight to the death, and yet you already know in advance that Varaha Dev's going to win. The demigods don't know that, and they're very worried. But their worry strikes me as also pointing to their ignorance, which points to their, sort of foolishness in a way. They don't know they don't understand what's going on.
It's described, I think, even in the 10th canto that, is it Aghasur? When Krishna is fighting with Aghasur, the devatas are peeking out from the clouds, but they're also going behind the clouds. They're afraid that if Aghasur wins, then the Aghasur will be angry with them for cheering his opponent.
Yeah.
So in what sense, the scriptures narrated from the perspective of the omniscient narrator. So we know more than the characters in the epics also, in one sense. We know the Lord, so we know that he's going to win.
I'm just now writing about this, one article on the subject of reading the Bhagavatam as what I'm calling religious reading, which involves repeated reading. And in repeated reading, we already know what happens. Repeated reading or hearing, sort of including all together. We already know what's going to happen, but we want to hear it again. And you could ask, why do we want to hear it again if we already know? We want to hear it again because Well, two things. One is it's a reenactment. There's a sense that it's happening again, or it's still happening, it's ongoing. And we want to hear it again because we know that there's something about it that even we've heard before, now we're going to notice something that we didn't notice before. Some aspect of what happens will come fresh. Nava Nava Rasa.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I was reading, at one level, this applies even to some books which are considered like classic literature. Say, some novels like of Shakespeare or Jane Austen or whatever. People read them again and again and again, and they get, I don't know about reenactment. It's like in great books you can find so many layers of wisdom, but in books about Krishna, it's not just layers of wisdom. We also discover manifestations of Krishna over there, or nuances about how to relate with Krishna. So
Yeah.
so it's you could say information is just like a preliminary aspect in that reading. There is so much more than
Yes.
information.
Yes.
Uh, so I was reading a little bit about the word myth. Although the word myth, in myth and mythology, we have a negative connotation to it. We don't say that
Yes.
Krishna is not mythology, but the way it is used in the academia, it's not so much that it is unreal, that it is more that it has some foundational value for some culture, for some tradition.
Yeah.
So often
Yeah.
when they use the word, say, Hindu mythology or something like that, it's the idea that these stories are like mental homes for a particular tradition or a particular culture or civilization, and they keep going back to
Yeah.
there again and again. So in one sense, we could also say that now how much somebody is connected to a culture or tradition could be seen not just by what kind of dress they wear or what kind of food they eat, but how much the culture's foundational stories have become like their mental home. And
Yeah.
so this part, I think this, the way we are churning, this also helps us to reside more and more in Krishna Lila.
Yes. The idea that myth is false, it goes back to Plato.
Okay.
Plato was questioning what are all these stories, these crazy stories from Homer and Hesiod, but then Plato he didn't say, therefore, down with myth. He created his own new myths.
Oh, okay.
The story of the cave, the men in the cave, and so on. Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. So I think he has.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about what is myth, first of all, how does it function in relation to society? It's often discussed in relation to ritual. There's a whole debate about which comes first, ritual or myth. And then others say, well, why do you want to say one or the other? They're both, they're inseparable. Okay. But
Yeah.
there's a sense in which myth is touching a deeper reality.
Yes.
And one way I like to think of it is that if we imagine a wheel of a cart, as it's rolling along the ground, it's touching the ground at very limited space as it moves. And so we have the world, we have the transcendent realm, which is represented by this wheel, which is turning, and it's touching this world in different points of time and space. And we perceive those points of time and space. And Prabhupada would often insist, this is history. It's not myth, it's history. So, okay, yes, it's history, and that there is a real connection with historical time. And at the same time, it's transcendental, it's beyond this world, it's beyond our very limited perceptions. And so it's not only history, it's super history.
This is a beautiful metaphor. So if I understand right, when you're talking about the wheel, that is not the samsara chakra. This is, you're talking about the wheel of transcendence. And where the wheel is touching the earth, that is material existence. So some aspect of this, some aspect of, say, the paramartha, the spiritual world, that comes in contact with the earth at particular times. So
time and place.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the
it's just an analogy. Analogies always have their limits, but I find it helpful.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So we accept that there is a historical aspect, and at the same time we also talk that, and we assert that there is a trans-historical aspect to it. And
yes, exactly.
So then we could also say that when Krishna manifests at a particular time in history or geography, then his manifestation will probably take on some of the characteristics of that particular place and time.
Yes.
So if Lord Chaitanya is manifesting in Bengal, he's not going to speak English at that time. He's going to speak Bengali. So like language and so many other things like that. But still, what he's giving is transcendental, beyond whatever is the regional.
Yes.
Yes.
So I would like to suggest I should end soon.
Yes,
but I would like to read one more verse if you want to find it. I think it's a nice verse to end on.
Yes, Maharaj, please.
It's Canto 3, Chapter 19, verse 31.
Okay, I'm just
Maitreya Uvacha Evam Hiranyaksham Asahya Vikramang Sasadayatva Harir Adishukara Jagamalokam Svam Akanditotsavam Samidita Pushkara Vishtaradivi. Sri Maitreya continued, after thus killing the most formidable demon Hiranyaksha, the Supreme Lord Hari, the origin of the boar species, returned to his own abode, where there is always an uninterrupted festival. The Lord was praised by all the demigods headed by Brahma. So that uninterrupted festival, Akandita Utsavam, of the spiritual realm, that is this wheel that I spoke of.
Oh, okay.
Or within that wheel, that festival is going on.
Akhanditotsavam. That's beautiful. The Brahma Samhita says Nitya, it's always every walk is a dance, every talk is a song. So Akhanditotsavam.
Yes.
I think Prabhupada also said that if he had the resources, every day we could have a festival. So
yes,
Akhanditotsavam. Beautiful. Very nice verse. So it's like a conclusion to the pastime, but it's also a very sweet meditation on the Lord and his nature and his abode. A lot is there in this verse.
Yes.
Thank you. It's beautiful. Very nice note to conclude it on, Maharaj. Should I try to summarize quickly in a few minutes?
That's your expertise, please.
I don't know. We did discuss a lot of things today. So we broadly started the discussion by talking about Varaha Deva discussed two main things. One is the role of the past in shaping one's life and one's choices. And the second, we discussed about Bhumi Devi and the role of protecting the earth. So in the first part, we started by talking about speech acts, where the act itself leads to some action, like a judge or a priest pronouncing marriage. And so similarly, we have curses and benedictions, both acting in that way. And then we discussed that, what all is affected by the curse. is it just the situations, the dispositions, the decisions? So to some extent, it's a multiple things, multiple levels the effect might be there, and it's very difficult to diffuse, to make it discrete. But if you look at it from this life's perspective, then what made somebody behave in a particular way, then we could say there's a convergence of factors from this life as well as previous life. And we talked about Hiranyak. Why was Hiranyak so violent? So there is no description that he was specifically evil against people in general, but he wanted to aggrandize, increase the power of his brother and please him. So that filial piety was a nice concept you mentioned. That we could say that is a virtue within him, and but it was misdirected because his brother was a demon, and there are negative influences coming for him from two levels. One is that the Jai Vijay had been cursed as per the plan of the Lord, so that he could have some Maushal Leela, some fighting, and then there was also conception of the two brothers happening at an inauspicious time because of Diti's insistence. So all that contributed to his arrogant or violent bellicose disposition. And then he seems to, as you said, very straightforward. In he challenges Varuna, and in the water body itself, Bor appears. And then we talked a little bit about the subversive conception of divinity as Varaha. So he's worshipped. In fact, he's considered as the personification of sacrifice. Although normally boars would simply be contaminating sacrifice, or in some cultures, not necessarily in the Indian culture, that boars might be sacrificed. There are normally it's cows or buffaloes or some other animals like goats and others, that are horses, that are sacrificed. And there, in that connection, we discussed more about this whole concept of how normally you said domestic animals are what are sacrificed, and dogs and cats, we had interesting discussion. Dogs are liminal, cats don't seem to be mentioned so much. And the boar, although the word amphibious beast is used, it's more like one animal, one gochara, one wandering in the forest. And in that connection, discuss about Varaha. When he manifests, he has his affection for the earth, can also be associated with the fact that boars dig into the earth and they find edible food over there. So now the earth itself is passive here, and so the Lord Varaha reciprocates with Brahmaji for while rescuing the earth. And then we discussed a little bit about the principle of rescuing the earth or protecting the earth. Today we can feel helpless sometimes, seeing the sheer magnitude of the forces that are disrupting the environment, but just as the Lord intervened to protect, so we can also be hopeful that the Lord can intervene. At the same time, we can also act as the arms of the Lord for doing our part. And then when we are acting as the arms of the Lord, we need to be careful to have the mentality of Prahalad, that we don't see friends and enemies. Like now, even the environmental issue has become very politicalized in the US presidential elections. So we need to avoid that friend and enemy mentality. He also mentioned about Prahalad being Prahalad and Vibhishan being exceptions. All the born in demoniac family, they're not demoniac. And although he stood firm to his principles, he was never directly disrespectful to his father. So then we also discussed some cultural aspects. We saw in Wikipedia some beautiful pictures of Varaha Dev, Varaha Narsimha temple, and this giant colossal Varaha temple in Ilam, as you mentioned. So it seems that there is Bhumi Devi with him as his consort. And toward the end, we discussed about this: when Bhumi Devi is to be protected, we don't want environmentalism to become like another religion. Rather, we want it to be, if we are practicing Krishna consciousness, spiritually conscious, then naturally we will have environmental consciousness. And our consciousness in taking care of the environment is not that it is for us to live and enjoy. She's the Lord's consort and she's our mother. And that's why we need to care for her as a part of our service to the Lord. And we also discussed a few verses So there's some places there is humor where he tries to hug the Lord, embrace the Lord to crush him, but the Lord disappears. And then this concluding verse which you mentioned about how he is the original boar. He comes to the earth and he goes back, and there's a Khanditotsavam. There is an eternal festival going on in the spiritual world. And in that connection, you mentioned about the idea of myth. So myth is, it is like there is something, there's historical, but something much more than history. So if you take the metaphor of the wheel is the wheel of the spiritual world where eternal festivals are happening. And sometimes those festivities, sometimes that divine Leela, it touches the ground, it touches the earth, and it's manifest for us to relish. So we accept that the myths are historic. What is called as myths, we consider the Leelas are historical, but they're also trans-historical. And if they become our mental homes, then we can become absorbed in Krishna, and that can be actually a very sweet way of being spiritually, devotionally conscious. So thank you very much, Maharaj.
Very good.
A lot of things. It's very relishable to have your Sangha and to have so much stimulation of thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's of your
time. My pleasure. So next time up is Nrsingadev, huh?
Yes, Maharaj. I think we may need to have multiple sessions, but we'll see how it goes. Nrsimhadev.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for your association and your sharing your wide-ranging as well as deep-going nectar. You go deep into Shastra as well as you have like a broad knowledge about various things. So it's wonderful. Thank you very much.
We are churning the nectar.
Yes, Maharaj, definitely.